All right, so get ready, because we're taking a deep dive into a film that really kind of shook up the horror genre, Exorcist II, The Heretic. We've got this review, and it's really fascinating. It really digs into why this sequel went so far beyond just the basic scares of the original, The Exorcist. Instead, it goes into like spirituality, telepathy, even like a cosmic battle between good and evil. Did it work?
Right.
I don't know. That's what we're here to find out.
Well, you know, it's interesting because the director, John Boorman, he was really going for something a lot more ambitious than just like a typical horror sequel.
Yeah.
He wanted to like explore the origins of evil, of demonic forces, almost like a theological, you know, deep dive disguised as a horror film.
Wow.
Like he was trying to understand the meaning of evil on this huge cosmic scale.
Yeah, he wasn't content with just giving us, you know, more of the same. He took this really sharp turn into this world of symbolism and psychology. But is that what fans of the original Exorcist really wanted? I mean, this review calls it one of the most divisive horror sequels ever.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely up there with some of the most controversial sequels out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's exactly why I think it's so interesting to kind of like pick it apart. You know, did it fail as a sequel, or was it just trying to do something completely different?
Right. And I mean, Linda Blair's back as Regan.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'm sure got fans excited.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that this is not going to be a repeat performance at all.
No, definitely not this time around. She's not the screaming, possessed child anymore. She's this young woman now, and she's dealing with the psychological scars of what happened to her.
Oh.
It's a much more internal and kind of quiet performance.
Oh.
It's like it's reflecting how deep the impact of her experience really was.
Yeah, so if Regan's journey is less about, you know, being possessed and more about processing this trauma,
yeah,
what's the story even about them?
Well, that's where Father Philip Lamont comes in.
Okay.
And he's played by Richard Burton. And he's been tasked by the church to investigate the death of Father Merrin.
Oh, so the priest from the first film?
Exactly. And that investigation leads him down this path that ends up intertwining with Regan's story in this really unexpected way.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
And this review describes Burton's character as like intense and brooding.
Yeah.
I can already picture him like, you know, wrestling with his doubts and like really diving into this mystery head first.
Absolutely.
But then we also have Louise Fletcher.
Yeah.
As Dr. Jean Tuskin, who's a psychologist. And she's brought in to evaluate Regan.
Right.
So is this where we get that like classic clash between like science and faith?
I mean, it's there, but I don't think it's like a simple conflict.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Tuskin, she's approaching Regan's experiences through this lens of psychology. Like she's trying to make sense of it all within a scientific framework.
Right.
But Father Lamont is grappling with the spiritual implications of it. You know, he's seeking answers in the realm of faith, so it adds this whole other layer of complexity to the film.
Okay, so it's like two different languages trying to describe the same thing.
Exactly.
Each with its own limitations.
Yeah, and, you know, speaking of different ways of seeing things, I'm curious about the visuals.
Yeah. What about them?
The review mentions these really amazing African sequences and this like psychedelic atmosphere.
Okay.
And it makes me think of films like Apocalypse Now, where the visuals are just as important as the words.
Yeah.
Yeah, Boorman definitely uses visual storytelling a lot.
Okay.
Like he uses dream sequences, mirror reflections, and even hypnotic strobe lights to create this really disorienting and otherworldly feel.
Wow.
It's almost like he's trying to visually represent the character's altered states of consciousness.
Okay.
And how the lines between reality and perception are blurred.
Wait, hold on. Hypnotic strobe lights.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could cause a seizure or something.
Well, maybe.
But I guess it really reinforces that idea that this film is trying to get inside the minds of its characters.
Exactly.
And explore their inner worlds.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about the film is how it uses hypnosis as like a plot device.
Okay. How so?
Well, there are these machines called synchronization machines.
Okay.
And they allow characters to basically enter Regan's memories.
What?
Yeah, and they can confront the demon's presence that's still lingering there.
Oh, wow. So it's like a visual representation of delving into the subconscious.
Right.
Okay, so we're not just dealing with like a standard horror sequel here.
No, not at all.
It sounds like Boorman is more interested in psychology and spiritual exploration than just jump scares and gore.
Right.
But does the review mention anything about the pacing and the tone?
Yeah, it does actually.
That's a...
Well, it points out that Exorcist II has a much more mystical and meditative tone than the original.
Okay.
And it's a lot slower paced, and it focuses more on ideas than on, you know, shocking you.
Okay, so it might not be the most action-packed film,
Probably not.
but this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
This review talks about a cosmic struggle between good and evil. It's like it's woven into the fabric of reality itself.
Yeah.
It even touches on concepts like collective consciousness and psychic connections.
Right.
Like suggesting that everything and everyone is linked on some level.
I think that's one of the most ambitious parts of the film.
Yep.
It's not just about demonic possession.
Okay.
It's about the nature of good and evil itself.
Wow.
He's suggesting that these forces can manifest in our world in ways we don't even understand, even across time and space.
It's a bold theme to tackle.
Definitely.
Especially in a horror sequel.
Yeah.
It seems like Boorman took a big swing with this one.
He did.
But did he connect?
Well, that's where the debate begins.
Okay.
The review acknowledges that the film has been criticized for having a complicated plot and a lack of focus. Some people feel that trying to expand the world of The Exorcist just backfired and made the story confusing and hard to follow.
So all this ambition and these visuals might have actually hurt the film?
Maybe.
Okay, so not exactly a critical darling.
Not really, but we're still talking about it all these years later.
That's true.
So it must have done something right.
Yeah. The review mentions that Exorcist II has a bit of a cult following.
Yeah.
And people appreciate that it's unconventional and that it breaks the rules of horror.
Yeah, they see it as a fascinating experiment.
Even if it's flawed.
Right.
It seems like the film's ambition is its greatest strength and its greatest weakness.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
It's not afraid to ask big questions and to explore complex themes and to experiment visually.
Right.
But it might have lost some people along the way
Yeah,
with its story and its kind of confusing mythology.
that's true.
So before we go any further, I'm curious what stood out to you about Exorcist II so far. Are you drawn to its ambition or its visuals?
You know what I find really fascinating is how Exorcist II seems to anticipate a lot of the themes and anxieties that we're still dealing with today.
Oh, really?
Like the idea of collective consciousness and psychic connections.
Okay.
It feels so relevant now, especially with social media and how connected everyone is globally.
Yeah.
We're more aware than ever of how interconnected we all are and how our actions can impact others.
Yeah, it's like the film was tapping into something that we're only just beginning to understand now. This idea that our thoughts and emotions can have a real impact on the world around us.
Yeah, and that's directly related to how the film explores good and evil.
Okay.
Exorcist II suggests that these forces aren't just external entities,
Right.
but something that's within us all. Like it's part of our shared consciousness.
It makes you wonder if we're all connected in this way, and if our thoughts and actions can influence the balance of good and evil in the world, then what does that mean for us as individuals?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions the film raises. And it doesn't give us easy answers.
It really makes you think about the consequences of your actions
Yeah.
and the role you play in shaping the world.
And that's where the film's exploration of trauma, memory, and recovery becomes so important.
Okay.
You know, Regan's journey isn't just about escaping from a demon.
Right.
It's about healing from the wounds of her past
Yeah.
and finding the strength to move on.
It's a reminder that even after going through something so terrible,
Yeah.
there's still a chance for healing.
For growth and transformation.
Yeah, and her struggle isn't just hers.
Exactly. Father Lamont is also fighting his own demons.
Okay.
You know, his own doubts and uncertainties.
So they're both on these parallel journeys of healing and self-discovery.
Exactly. They're both trying to make sense of their experiences and find a way to move forward.
And those journeys are personal, but they also reflect what society was going through.
Right. The 1970s was a time of such upheaval, and the film captures that feeling of unease. Like the world is about to change, but we don't know how.
It's like the film is saying we're all going through this together,
Yeah.
trying to make sense of the chaos and find meaning in a world that feels like it's spinning out of control.
And in that struggle, we discover our own resilience, our capacity for healing, and our potential for good.
So maybe Exorcist II. The Heretic, even though it's flawed and people didn't all love it, it still offers a message of hope.
It does.
It suggests that even in the darkest times, there's still the possibility of redemption and of healing and finding the light within ourselves and in the world.
Absolutely.
It's a really powerful thought.
It is.
I think we need to take a moment to let all of that sink in.
Yeah.
But when we come back, let's dive deeper into some of the symbolic elements of the film.
Okay.
And see if we can figure out what Boorman was trying to say with his visuals.
Sounds good. It's interesting how Exorcist II uses all these really striking visual metaphors to explore these big existential questions we were just talking about.
Okay, like what?
Well, like those swarms of locusts
that
keep appearing throughout the film.
Yeah, I remember the review mentioned them, but I didn't really think about what they meant.
Right.
They're in Regan's dreams in those African scenes, even during the climax.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're this unstoppable force of chaos and destruction.
Exactly. They're not just random bugs, they're symbolic.
Okay.
Think about how Hitchcock used birds in The Birds.
Oh.
Those birds weren't just attacking people.
Yeah.
They represented this primal fear of nature turning against us, order collapsing.
Right.
The locusts in Exorcist II, I think they work in a similar way.
So they're like a visual representation of the evil that's threatening to consume everything.
Yeah, and it's not just the locusts.
Okay, what else?
Remember those synchronization machines and all those hypnotic scenes?
Yeah.
They're full of flashing lights and distorted images.
Right.
And it creates this feeling of being really disoriented and uneasy.
Yeah, it's like Boorman is using those visuals to show us what's going on inside the characters' minds.
Exactly like he's pulling you into their experience.
Yeah.
Those scenes are more about making you feel what the characters are feeling than showing you what's happening.
Okay, now I'm curious about the color symbolism in the film.
Oh, yeah.
The review mentioned vibrant visuals, but it didn't really give any details.
Right.
Do you think there's a deeper meaning to how Boorman uses color?
I think so. Remember those really vivid, almost hallucinatory African sequences?
Yeah.
I think those are a good example.
Oh.
Think about the warm, earthy tones of the landscape, and then contrast that with the stark white of the psychiatric hospital where Regan is being treated.
Right. The colors in those settings are so different.
Yeah, it's almost like the warm colors represent this primal energy, like a connection to something ancient and powerful.
And the cooler colors represent a more clinical, detached approach.
Exactly. It's like Boorman is visually representing the clash between these two different ways of understanding the world.
Like the spiritual and the scientific.
Yeah, right. And it ties back into that theme of duality that runs through the whole film.
Okay.
Like there are always these opposing forces at play, light and darkness, good and evil, faith and reason.
And it's not just about external forces, right?
No, definitely not.
The film seems to suggest that this duality exists inside of us as well.
Absolutely. Think about Regan and Father Lamont.
Okay.
They're both portrayed as these spiritual warriors fighting against this powerful evil.
Yeah.
But they're also deeply flawed characters. They're haunted by their own personal demons.
Right.
It's almost like they represent the two sides of human nature.
That reminds me of classic archetypes like Joan of Arc or King Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
They're often portrayed as these larger-than-life figures who are chosen to fight evil.
Right, but they're also human.
Yeah.
They're vulnerable and they make mistakes.
And that archetype really taps into our fear of the unknown.
It does.
The idea that we're always fighting against forces that we don't understand.
But it also gives us a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Like maybe even ordinary people can rise to the occasion and make a difference.
And it's not just individual heroes in this film.
Right. Remember those themes of collective consciousness and psychic connections?
Yeah.
It's like Boorman is suggesting that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. That our thoughts and actions can actually have an impact beyond our immediate surroundings.
That's one of the most unsettling things about the film.
I know. It's like he's saying that evil isn't just something out there. It's something that exists inside all of us.
Yeah, like we're all connected to it on some level.
Exactly.
It's a scary thought, but it's also kind of fascinating.
It is. It makes you think about your own role in the world.
Yeah, and the impact of your choices.
Like every little thing you do can have a ripple effect.
Okay, so the more we talk about it, the more I realize how much is going on beneath the surface of this film. Because there are all these layers of meaning.
Yeah, for example, the review mentions mirror reflections as a recurring motif.
Oh, yeah. What do you think that means?
Well, mirrors can be such powerful symbols. Yeah. They can represent self-reflection duality, the distortion of reality.
Okay.
I think in Exorcist II, they might be reflecting Regan's fragmented psyche.
Okay.
Like her struggle to make sense of her trauma.
Or maybe they represent the blurred lines between good and evil.
That's a good point.
And what about Father Lamont's trip to Africa?
Yeah.
To learn more about Pazuzu?
Right. It's a literal journey, of course.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a metaphor.
Like what?
Like he's descending into the heart of darkness.
Okay, so it's like he's going into the primal depths of human consciousness.
Yeah, and he's confronting these ancient fears and myths that have shaped how we understand evil.
And that journey is dangerous.
Oh, yeah, both physically and psychologically.
It's like he's risking his own soul to try to understand this demon.
And don't forget, he's a priest.
Right.
A man of faith.
So his trip to Africa is also a test of his beliefs.
Absolutely. It's like he's wrestling with the very foundations of his understanding of the world.
So he's caught between two worlds, faith and reason.
Yeah.
Trying to find a way to make them fit together.
And remember, this is all happening during the 1970s.
Right.
A time when everything was changing.
Yeah, so there's this added layer of anxiety.
Exactly.
Like the world is falling apart.
Yeah, it's like the film is mirroring the anxieties of that time.
It makes the horror even more powerful.
It does, because it's tapping into those very real anxieties that we all feel.
It's like Boorman is using horror to explore these bigger social and philosophical themes.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just trying to scare us.
Right. He wants us to think.
Yeah.
And to question our assumptions about the world, about good and evil, about what's real and what's not.
It's amazing how much he put into what could have been just another horror sequel.
It really is.
Speaking of other films, the review mentions Rosemary's Baby, The Tenant, and Videodrome.
Oh, yeah.
I can definitely see the similarities.
Me too, especially in terms of how they explore psychology.
Yeah, and how they blur the lines between reality and nightmares.
They all create this feeling that something is wrong.
Yeah, but you can't quite figure out what it is.
Right. They're all about reality breaking down and identity being eroded.
And they all use surrealism and symbolism to create that atmosphere of unease.
We could do a whole other deep dive just on those films.
We could.
But before we get sidetracked, I'm curious, what do you think it is about Exorcist II that still draws people in? Even after all these years, what makes it endure, even though it's flawed and not everyone loves it?
I think it's the film's ambition.
Okay.
Its willingness to tackle these big questions about good and evil faith and reason, the nature of reality.
It doesn't give you easy answers.
No, it doesn't. It challenges you to think.
But it uses these really striking visuals
Yeah.
and these haunting metaphors, these images that stay with you.
It's a film that stays with you.
Yeah, it makes you question everything.
Exactly. It's not just a horror film.
Okay.
It's a cinematic experience that challenges you to confront the darkness within yourself and within the world. And maybe in that confrontation, we find some hope.
Yeah, a spark of light that helps us through the shadows.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
But before we get too philosophical, I think we need to take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, let's talk about the film's legacy and what we can learn from its attempt to redefine the horror sequel.
Sounds good.
We're back, and, I'm really struck by how much Exorcist II seems to, foreshadow these themes and anxieties that are even more relevant today.
Yeah, it's almost like it was predicting the future.
Right.
You know how it explores collective consciousness and psychic connections?
Mm-hmm.
That feels so relevant now, especially in this age of social media and instant global communication.
Right.
Like, we're more aware than ever before of how connected we all are.
Right.
And how what we do can affect others in ways we might not even realize.
Yeah, it's like the film was tapping into something that we're only now starting to understand.
Yeah.
This idea that our thoughts and emotions and choices, they can actually have a real impact on the world.
And that ties right back into the film's exploration of good and evil.
Okay.
Exorcist II suggests that these forces aren't just like these outside things,
Right.
but something that's inside all of us. Like it's part of our collective consciousness.
It makes you wonder if we're all connected this way, and if our thoughts and actions can actually affect the balance of good and evil. What does that mean for our own personal responsibility?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest questions the film asks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give us easy answers.
It really challenges you to think about your choices.
Right, and the consequences of your actions.
And the role you play in the world.
And that's where the film's exploration of trauma memory and recovery is so important.
Yeah. How so?
Well, Regan's journey isn't just about escaping from a demon.
Right.
It's about healing from her past
Mm-hmm.
and finding the strengths to move on with her life.
It's a reminder that even after experiencing something so horrible,
Yeah.
there's still a chance for healing and growth and transformation.
And her struggle isn't just hers alone.
Right. Father Lamont's dealing with his own demons, too.
Okay.
His own doubts and uncertainties.
So they're both on these parallel paths of healing and self-discovery.
Exactly. They're both trying to understand their experiences and find a way to move forward.
And even though those journeys are very personal, they also kind of reflect a larger societal struggle.
Yeah. You know, the 1970s was a time of so much change and upheaval.
Right.
And the film captures that sense of unease. Like the world is on the verge of something new, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah. It's like the film is saying that we're all going through this together.
Right.
We're all trying to make sense of things and find meaning in a world that feels out of control.
And in that struggle, we discover our own resilience, our ability to heal, and our potential for good.
So maybe Exorcist II. The Heretic, even with its flaws and mixed reception, ultimately offers us a message of hope.
Yeah, it suggests that even when things are really bad,
even when we face something truly evil, there's still a chance for redemption, for healing, for finding the light.
both within ourselves and in the world around us.
The film might not be a perfect horror sequel,
Okay.
but it asks us to really consider where evil comes from. Does it come from outside forces or from within our own minds and our shared consciousness?
Wow.
Maybe the real horror lies in the blur between reality and perception and the shadows of our past.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Right.
Well, maybe Exorcist II. The Heretic isn't just a movie to watch, but like a journey to take.
Yeah.
A journey into the heart of darkness where you confront your own shadows and ultimately discover the power of hope and healing.
It's definitely a film that stays with you.
So go check it out, think about it, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep diving deep.